2.5 inches tall and about 4 inches wide. And they just had lots of pictures. And there was a photograph in there one time of the Plaza Theater. At the time, I should have saved it because I've never met a piece of paper I didn't like, but I didn't save it. But everything has got to be in the Library of Congress sooner or later.
Right.
And it's called Quick Magazine, and just scan it. What it was a photograph of the theater. They were showing a French film called La Ronde, R-O-N-D-E, and it opened in Washington before it opened in New York City, because it had a lot of trouble with the censors in New York. So they decided they would open it in Washington. Washington didn't really have a censor board. The films came through the censor board in Maryland. And so most of the stuff, in fact, all of the stuff showing in Washington, D.C. was from the censor board in Maryland. They'd run it through there first. But La Ronde didn't go through the censor board in Maryland. By today's standards, there was nothing wrong with it.
Right.
But in those days, it was. I'm going to use the word bold.
And La Ronde, so it was kind of a...
That was the name. That was the picture on the marquee, and they had a photograph of it, and they were talking about how the film had opened there and before it opened in New York.
And Quick was kind of one of those little magazines with a pin-up on the cover.
That's exactly right. But this was inside.
Wow, okay. And that was when La Ronde came out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So why would it have opened in D.C., do you think? Or?
Well, they couldn't open it in New York. They couldn't open it.
I see.
It couldn't open unless it had the seal.
Oh, okay. But the censor board in Maryland...
well, they didn't see it either.
Okay. But D.C. was able to...
They were able to
skirt that.
Yeah, because it was. See, the Plaza was a class operation. It was when I was there with Roth. I mean, we had a matron downstairs. We served espresso, coffee while you were waiting for the show. You could have a cup of espresso. We had, if you didn't want to go in when the show started, after the show had started, you'd give you a little number. You go down in the lounge, sip on a cup of espresso, watch a little television, have TV down there, and we would call you at the end of the show by number.
Wow.
And we're talking a class operation.
So was it big?
That's when Roth had it.
But did Roth bought it from? Was it somebody else's operation?
No, Roth built the place.
I see.
It used to be, as I was told, it had been a bank, and the manager's office was in the old vault. They had taken the door off. Wow.
And nobody ever took pictures. You never took photographs.
No.
There. Yeah. No. Did you have but it sounds like you were with Roth's and then went to Translux.
That's right.
And you were part of the corporation then.
Yeah. Right.
Because and Translux was a newsreel theater, wasn't it?
That's exactly right.
And but that was after you were.
Now, the Translux Theater at 14th and H. Okay. Now, when they had. Translux means reverse light. So they had their projection equipment behind the screen. Okay, that's the gimmick with Translux. The projection room was behind the screen. You had a screen that was translucent. You could put the image on there. Now, the gimmick Translux was they had the basic patent on a lens that you could project the image on the screen and the lettering would be okay. That was the Translux lens. Are you with me?
I am.
Because if you have a regular lens and you project an image on, say, a piece of toilet paper or something, your lettering is going to be backwards, looking at the other side.
Right.
But the Translux lens used a flip-flop. So you could put your projection room behind the screen with basically your translucent screen, and you didn't even have a doorman. All you had was the cashier and a turnstile.
And so everything was on a loop.
Yeah.
And you were just showing the newsreels.
That's right.
But when did it go?
It was a wonderful operation. But then, when CinemaScope came out, CinemaScope, there was no Translux CinemaScope lens. So the only thing they could do was, in order to get a CinemaScope picture, was to move the booth around to the other side of the auditorium, which they did. They had a party room in the Translux Theater upstairs, like where you'd have the balcony. They had a party room, and they tore that out and put in the projection room.
So this must have been in the 50s, or?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the first picture was. It could have been From Here to Eternity, but I'm not inclined to think it was. Maybe Bridge on the River Kwai. Whatever it was something that was in CinemaScope.
Can you hold for one moment, Jack?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Jack.
Hello again.
I'm sorry. So yeah, I just but the thing is the so basically the Translux then became a standard theater.
They had Transluxes all over New York, where they had the newsreel theater.
Right.
And that was their thing. They had the screen. You see, you could still have an extra light in your auditorium. You didn't have to be pitch dark. When you had the light coming from behind the screen, you could have more light in your auditorium, so you didn't need an usher. And people were only coming in for an hour anyway. They were coming in to see the newsreel. Remember, this is before television newsreel. And if you wanted to see what was going on, other than looking at a magazine or a newspaper, you went to the newsreel theater. And you plunked down your 25 or 30 cents or half a buck. You went inside, you watched the big screen, you saw the news, and you came on out.
And that's where they would show, like, the Universal newsreels and...
Yeah, the MGM and all. That's right. That's right. It was the Hearst newsreel and the Universal. And I once read a book, which I seem to have misplaced, but it was called Merely Colossal, about the guy who operated the Rialto Theater down on 42nd Street in New York. And he was reminiscing about the newsreel theater. He said all you did was just sign up for all the newsreels and sit back and pray for war.
That's funny. Yeah, it's like, I guess that's the thing. It really, I mean, the days of the newsreel, it was World War II, and
that's exactly right.
You had United News by
your March of Time,
right,
which was always big, and you had your sports reels, and you had a cartoon and travelogue. And the more, when I got on the scene, the newsreels were down to about 10 minutes. So we had to fill in a lot with travelogues, a cartoon, a sports reel. And there wasn't an awful lot, you're burning up a lot of film, because you've got 2 changes a week, and you're going through a lot of film. So one of my jobs, besides running the theater, was I had to look for other product. And I would get a lot of travelogues from the airlines, and then run them through. Even had to run those through the censor, and get the seal. And then we had 16 millimeter in the theater. We could run 16 millimeter, which did the job.
That's amazing. So now you locally had to find that content?
Yeah. And then I booked the theater for about 3 or 4 years. Then when I left, they changed the policy.
Well, they went to first run then, so...
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So you were the last of the news, this full...
Well, in fact, I went from there, I went to the Criterion down on 45th Street in Broadway. And from the Criterion, I went over to Grand Central Theater. The last newsreel theater in the world was in Grand Central Station. And I was in there for about 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And then they closed. That was the end of that.